So I guess it would be fair to ask, who am I and what the heck do I know about this subject? Well, like maybe many of you, I've been playing with this stuff. I've been playing with these toys since I was a kid. I bought my first multi-track, a Tascam 244 back in '83, got completely hooked on home recording. This was back in the day when I only had one effect, a Roland SRV 2000, for the cool price of, anyone going to take a guess here? A single reverb unit. It was over $2,000. So what I had back in the day was 4 tracks of noisy cassette and one effect, price tag of $3,000 in mid-80s dollars, which is probably about 6,000 in today's dollars. So don't you ever complain to me about the price and quality of today's products. I'll have absolutely none of it. Anyway, I read everything I could over the coming years and moved to Hollywood, California in 1987 when I met a cute girl on the beach. We eloped a few months later, and beyond belief, we are still married to this day. I worked in music stores and found out I just have kind of a knack for using this stuff, and the word spread that I was the guy to talk to if anybody wanted to learn how to use their stuff. Then I had a fortunate set of events where I was hired by a bunch of people to program synths and be a tech and consultant to artists like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Phil Collins, Diana Ross, Earth, Wind and Fire, and a bunch of people. You just got to remember where I come from, right? I'm from a little town in South Australia, basically just a kid who listened to all this music on the radio, far away in America, and then to start working for these people, it was an absolute dream come true. So I decided right then that if I was going to be hanging around these kind of people, then I was going to learn everything I could from these people that I was basically rubbing shoulders with. Unbelievably, I know what it's like to be in the studio with David Foster. I was actually in the room when Whitney's huge hit, I Will Always Love You, was recorded. I've looked over everyone's shoulder I could basically peek over, and I've spent really the last quarter of a century learning really everything I can about this subject. I'm really passionate about it, and I'd have to be really, when you think about it, I'd have to be an absolute idiot not to have learned a thing or two, right? I mean, I assume you all have careers and professions that you've been doing for a long period of time, and you know a lot about your area of expertise. I don't know about your stuff, but I really do know this stuff. Now, as you might imagine, we all use different tools to record our stuff, so I definitely won't be going into details of how to assign effects in your particular unit, for example. We have DVDs on most of the gear out there, and if you want specific help on your product, just go ahead and see ProAudioDVDs.com for that. Now, having said that, this course is all about developing skills and really learning the principles that will help you no matter what tool you're recording on. And let me say this information is timeless. It won't matter if you're recording today using BR1600 or 2488, or 10 years time when we're all recording on Dick Tracy watches. This information is really valuable because you'll use it forever. And the flip side is this: if you don't know this stuff, it won't matter how much crap you buy. You just won't get it done. So let's begin. Now, to understand the present way we record, we pretty much need to look back at where we've come from and to look at a brief history of recording. Now, back in the early days, it all started back in Depression days when only really a few people could afford a phonograph. So the market for recorded music was pretty slim. It was mainly for radio. A recording engineer's job back in those times was to sum the outputs from a few microphones, maybe even only one microphone of maybe Ella Fitzgerald and an orchestra, and mix it into a mono recording. Stereo didn't even come on the scene till 1957. So an engineer's job back in that day was to capture the sound of the players and blend them the best he could by positioning them all around a mic or two. The horn players were further back, maybe a vocalist was up close. Everything recorded together in one take at one time. If anyone screwed up, you started again or you just played through it. Recordings went directly to disc and then to tape, and then something extraordinary happened in 1955. Big thing happened. Multi-track arrived. Yep, Ampex created the very first multi-track and 8-track recorder that was snapped up by legendary guitarist Les Paul. Now, for the first time ever, you could record separate tracks of audio in independent tracks. Big deal. Multi-track recording was born. Now you could do really amazing new things here. You didn't have to record all the parts at the same time. Each performance can be re-recorded without messing up the others there. You could play all the parts yourself. You could mix each part after the fact and postpone all of those mixing decisions until mix down later. Now after that, multi-track started to mature. We went from 8 tracks to 16 to 24 tracks, and life was good, but you had to be rich and famous to record basically anything. The glamour of the recording studio was legendary, and it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of like hallowed ground that average musician would never be kind of a part of. Equipment was great, but very expensive. Then something happened. There was a home recording revolution. Things started to change in the late 1970s when Tascam started the whole home recording revolution with products like the Model 80 and others. But the defining product that brought home recording really to the masses was Tascam's 4-track cassette-based 144. This changed the whole playing field. In fact, one of Bruce Springsteen's early albums was recorded on a 144. Then after that, in the 80s, we had the MIDI revolution. In the coming years, we had the advent of the synthesizer, drum machines, effects units. Recording was pretty much done back in those days into sequences that recorded your playing, allowed you to edit those performances, and then play that data back into your synths and, say, drum machines perfectly, just like you were playing them live. But all of these recordings were MIDI performances only. No audio could basically be recorded back then. But the next bombshell of home recording happened in 1996 with the introduction of Roland's VS880. Did anyone of you guys have one of these? It was a very popular piece of equipment. For the first time ever, a musician could record audio digitally. Massive move forward in technology. Basically, everything up to that point had been tape-based. I mean, there were digital recorders around at the time, but they were like $250,000. I'm absolutely serious here. The Synclavier system, fully equipped, was about $250,000. And there were really only a handful around. Michael Jackson had one when I was out with him. We actually had a large tent built at every concert about the size of this room with its own air conditioning and everything to just play some of Michael's backing vocals and choirs and sound effects and so on. A massive $250,000 Synclavier system that today could be replaced by this Mac laptop here. Actually, a friend of mine would regularly go over to Sweden to work on Benny Andersson. He was a keyboard player from ABBA. He had a Synclavier system. This stuff was massively out of anyone's budget, but the VS880 really opened the floodgates to all the digital recorders that we use today. Everything can go back to that. And then finally, you know, what happened there, the average person could now afford a really good home recording studio. But the flip side of this is that back in the past, only the professionals with hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment would get to really practice and use this stuff. People with audio engineering courses underneath their belt. This is really important because you're being required to know all the stuff that was previously known only by the people who did this as a full-time job. So quit being hard on yourself, okay? Take a deep breath and we'll begin at the beginning, and that is basically what are the elements of sound, and more importantly, why do you give a rip?